Welcome to International Urban Training Center of Republic of Korea. This is Professor Lee, serving as the president of the center. Today, I'd like to share with you my insights, my perspectives on how the current COVID-19 pandemic is now impacting the global economy with a special focus on the Asian countries. First of all, I'd like to convey my sincere regards and best wishes to you and your family members during this very difficult period of time because of the pandemic. As you may know, even now, the number of confirmed cases is now very rapidly increasing in the whole world. Of course, it depends upon the countries. I hope that your countries are now becoming better with decreasing number of confirmed cases. Once again, I really would like to convey my best regards and wishes to you and your family and also your home country as well. As a matter of fact, because of the policy of social distancing in Korea, actually I'm now working from home. So perhaps you are now looking at the view of my back garden of my house. Actually, I'm living in a suburb of Seoul and a suburb very close to actually Kangwon province. Now, I'd like to bring up the PowerPoint slides that I prepared to talk about the current situation of COVID-19 pandemic. The title of my talk today is the implications of COVID-19 pandemic for Asian countries. So now here's the table of contents. So I'd like to begin with brief outline of the current status of and prospects for the COVID-19 pandemic. By the way, it's the 5th of July 2020 in Korea time. And secondly, I'd like to now talk about the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the global economy with a special focus on Asian economy, as I previously said. And I also would like to talk about how the pandemic has been and will be influencing global trade and investment. And then we'll discuss the issues related to the reshoring, particularly exit from China, and also some issues related to deglobalization, which you may have heard of a lot in recent months. And before I just come to the concluding part of my talk today, I'd like to talk briefly about why the deglobalization has been progressing even before the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so now let me just play the slideshow from here now. So as of today, there have been over 10 million confirmed cases in the whole world, and there have been over 520,000 deaths reported to World Health Organization. This is a map of the world with with red dots, which are actually highlighting the areas where the COVID-19 pandemic is heavily actually occurring. So as you see now, actually, it started in China, as you all know, but it moved to some neighboring countries in Asia, such as South Korea, Japan, and some Southeast Asian countries. And then it just moved to Europe, and then North America, such as the United States and Canada. And then now it is now spreading to to the southern hemisphere, such as Brazil and some African countries, and also India is now heavily affected by the pandemic. As you see now, on the left side of the map, you see the list of countries which have been, most heavily affected by the pandemic. So U.S. is, number one in terms of the number of confirmed cases. Now with, more than 2.8 million people as confirmed cases, and then Brazil is second runner-up, and then followed by Russia, India, Peru, Chile, and such. Okay, so as I said, this actually graph shows some overall time trend of the number of daily confirmed cases for the countries which have been heavily affected, such as Brazil, Mexico, the U.S., India, and such. Now, you see now the red line here is actually representing the number of confirmed cases for the United States. As is now, actually, it once actually reached a very highest level with about 32,000 cases in early April, and then it has been sort of decreasing until mid June, and then it has been now picking up again. Now actually, as of July the 4th, the number of new confirmed cases in the U.S. is now actually over 50,000 people, which is very much alarming. And then actually Brazil is another country which is now actually showing a very rapid increase in the number of confirmed cases. And then India is another country which is actually witnessing a very rapid increase in the number of new cases. What this all implies is that, overall, the number of confirmed cases in the whole world is actually not decreasing. Actually, as you will see now, momentarily, the number of confirmed cases overall in the whole world is now rapidly increasing, which is very much alarming, as I previously said. So many people are now very much worrying that the world may enter a second Great Depression, according to the scholars like Joseph Stiglitz, and also people like Professor Nuria Rubini, who is a professor of economics at New York University in the US, is actually warning that we may actually face with greater depression, which is actually worse than the Great Depression of 1930s. During the first quarter of this year, US actually recorded negative growth rate of 5.0%, and Eurozone overall also recorded minus 3.8% growth rate, and Italy, France, Spain are those which have been particularly heavily affected by the pandemic. And China also experienced a negative growth rate of 6.8%. South Korea also recorded minus 1.4% growth rate in the first quarter of this year. So most countries are ramping up public spending and cutting interest rates to provide massive liquidity support. For example, U.S. Federal Reserve Board announced zero interest rate until 2022, as you may have heard in your country. And Actually, during the Great Depression of 1930s and global economic crisis of 2018 and 9, all governments and central banks at the time needed to do to revive the economy was to embark on massive fiscal and monetary expansion to offset the reduction in demand. However, the current pandemic is not just a negative demand shock to the economy. This is actually typo, sorry about that. So it's not just a negative demand shock to the economy, but also, is a negative supply shock. Therefore, there is clearly a limit to the capacity of conventional fiscal and monetary policy to improve consumer confidence in the current situation. So without doubt, many international organizations, such as International Monetary Fund, for example, predicted that the world GDP or world economy overall will shrink by 3%, throughout the whole year of 2020, according to its forecast announced in April 2020. But because of even the worsening situation, the IMF actually updated its world economic outlook in on June 24th, and it is now actually forecasting that world economy may shrink by 4.9% this year. So if we were to just look at the table below, you see actually the advanced or developed countries are those which are actually predicted to experience very serious economic downturn. Like for example, the US is now actually predicted to grow negatively by 8%, and even Japan and the UK, Canada, all of the advanced countries in here are now predicted to experience very serious economic recession this year. But it is now actually predicting that in the following year, in 2021, these countries will revive very quickly. And emerging countries or emerging markets and developing countries are also predicted to experience negative economic growth, but not seriously as advanced economies, as you can see here now. So it is once again overall saying that the International Monetary Fund is now forecasting that perhaps this year, particularly in the second quarter of 2020, most of the countries are going to hit the lowest, the bottom of economic recession, and then are expected to revive, in the following quarters, like from the third quarter of 20, and then, the IMF is now predicting that in the following year, in 2021, most of the countries will revive very quickly, as I said. However, actually the baseline assumption of all these predictions made by International Monetary Fund or OECD or World Bank or your national agencies or central banks, as a matter of fact, based on assumption that the pandemic is going to fade in the second half of 2020, allowing for a gradual lifting of containment measures. However, as you see momentarily in the next few slides, the number of confirmed cases is still increasing in the whole world, and there is a substantial risk that a much worse second wave may be repeated for COVID-19. In particular, Southern Hemisphere countries such as Brazil and other countries have already been hit hard by the virus, which may migrate to the Northern Hemisphere and trigger a bigger second wave in the fall of this year. Therefore, it is very likely that the global economy will contract by more than 4.9% in this year, and that will continue to contract in the following year. That is actually my prediction. This is a graph that shows the number of daily confirmed cases from the January 1st through the first half of the year. As a matter of fact, they are the 4th of July. And as you see now, the number of daily confirmed cases has been increasing very rapidly. And on the 2nd of July, it reached 200,000 per day. 200,000 per day. In other words, every day there was about 200,000 people who were confirmed, infected by the COVID-19. And in June alone, this period alone, it just reached, it increased very rapidly. So actually, the number of daily confirmed cases increased per day by about 2% in June alone. Because of such a rapid increase in the number of daily confirmed cases, as you see now, the number of cumulative confirmed cases, or the CCC in short, reached a very high number in June. But actually, in the earlier months of this year, actually, the number of cumulative confirmed cases were not that high. Actually, it reached 1 million people on the 2nd of April, which is here, 1 million. So it was about the 2nd of April when the number of cumulative confirmed cases reached 1 million people. And then it reached 10 million people on 29th of June. And it reached 10 million people on June 29th. So in other words, it took just another 3 months to reach 10 million people. And 3 months ago, it was only 1 million. In other words, in 3 months' time, the number of cumulative confirmed cases became 10 times greater than what it was. So I made up 3 possible scenarios for possible projections of confirmed cases until the end of this year. The first scenario is that the number of daily confirmed cases will continue to be 200,000 as in the last few days. As you see now, in the last few days, it was around 200,000 people. So we can just simply assume that it will no longer increase like that. So it will just stay at the level of what it was in the last few days of July. So then this is what you see now, but which I think is very much unlikely. What is more likely is the second scenario, which is the following. So the daily confirmed cases will increase similarly to increasing trend of June 2020. What does that mean? That means, if we were to just go back here now, in June alone, June, the number of daily confirmed cases actually increased every day by about 2%. So you see now, it is not just a linear line, but it is rather sort of non-linear. It was sort of increasing like that. It was increasing. So it was actually increasing by about 2% per day. So we can simply assume that the daily confirmed cases will continue to increase similarly to the increasing trend of June this year. Then you see now the number of daily confirmed cases will be around 7 million people on the 31st of December this year. And the third scenario is the most pessimistic as far as I'm concerned, which is, you see now, in 3 months' time, the number of daily confirmed cases increased to reach 10 million people from 1 million people on the 2nd of April. In other words, in 3 months' time, the number of confirmed cases became 10 times greater. So we can simply assume that it will continue to, become greater by 10 times every 3 months. In other words, at the end of September, the number of daily confirmed cases will become 10 times greater. So which all means that the number of daily confirmed cases will be around 18 million people on the last day of December. Okay. Then if we look at those three possible scenarios for the cumulative number of confirmed cases until the end of the year, and then this graph shows that the number of cumulative confirmed cases will continue to increase anyway, even if we simply assume that the number of daily confirmed cases will just stay at the same number, which is 200,000, which is the number that was witnessed, for the last few days. Then, at the end of the year, the total number of cumulative confirmed cases will be around 47 million people, which is still very much large because at the end of June it was only 10 million people. So at the end of the year it will become almost 5 times larger than what it was at the end of June. And the second scenario, which I think is most plausible, is that the daily confirmed cases will continue to increase, similarly to the increasing trend of June 20. So in other words, it will just continue to increase, by 2% per day. Then the number of cumulative confirmed cases will be about 380 million people. In other words, 0.38 billion people on the last day of this year. And the most pessimistic scenario is that the number of daily confirmed cases will increase 10 times every 3 months, as in the first half of this year. In other words, it will just continue to increase by 2.54% per day. Then the number of cumulative confirmed cases will be about 1 billion people on the 31st of December. So in other words, if this is what is going to happen, economic prospects for the global economy will be a lot worse than what has been predicted by International Monetary Fund. What I'm all trying to say is that COVID-19 is not finishing up at all. Actually, it is now expanding very rapidly. So predictions of IMF and all other international organizations are all based on the assumption that the COVID-19 pandemic will fade in the second half of 2020. But the reality is just the opposite, actually. The COVID-19 is now actually expanding very rapidly in the second half of this year. Perhaps it will continue to expand even in the following year. So perhaps this is a graph that I just took from the IMF World Economic Outlook report, and it is actually showing some possible scenarios, and perhaps the yellow line is most realistic, but still this is not quite close to what I actually projected in the previous screens. So what I'm really trying to emphasize here is that it is very much likely that we may experience a very serious Great Depression this year and in the following years to come. So what's worse is that coronavirus may push as many as 500 million people into poverty. So the pandemic threatens a lot of the progress that the world has made in recent decades to reduce poverty. And the developing countries of Asia in particular have reduced poverty on a massive scale in a remarkably short time period. And as we all know, Asia's poverty reduction miracle was a byproduct of Asia's economic miracle, which lifted the continent from a largely low-income region to an overwhelmingly middle-income region with a generation. However, COVID-19 pandemic is now posing a serious risk to the unprecedented reduction in global poverty in recent decades, which is very much worrisome. And also, what is also worrisome is that about 2 billion workers around the world who work in the underground informal economy are being squeezed hardest by the pandemic. According to a report by International Labor Organization, around 76% of informal economy workers are experiencing serious economic hardship because of the pandemic. As you know, informal economy workers include self-employed street vendors, for example, construction site workers, and millions of other workers who are not captured by official statistics. Furthermore, the income of those workers are projected to drop by an average of 34%. Therefore, the pandemic is exacerbating the gaping income inequality, which was already the world's most pressing economic and social problem even before the advent of COVID-19 pandemic. And global trade is now expected to fall by between 13% and 32% in this year, according to a report by World Trade Organization. However, perhaps the pessimistic scenario assumes that perhaps the pandemic will continue to throughout the whole year, but still, it is not quite realistic. Still, to me, it is very much optimistic. Compared with the scenarios that I just presented to you. So anyway, WTO is now projecting that global trade may contract by as much as 32% this year. And here you see now where is hold on a second. The Asia is now exports, for example. Asia's exports may decrease. So you may just focus on the pessimistic scenario because this is no longer actually plausible because the COVID-19 pandemic is now very much rapidly expanding. So therefore, Asia's exports overall may contract by more than 36%, but it is now actually forecasting. The WTO is now projecting that Asia's exports may revive very quickly in the following year, but it all depends upon how long the pandemic will last. According to my projection, perhaps at least up until the mid 2021, the corona pandemic will just continue to expand. So even this projection to me is rather very much optimistic. So you may, I think, you might as well prepare yourself for the worst scenario, in terms of overall economic growth of the global economy, also of your home country, also your home country exports of goods and services as well. And investment as well is now projected to increase as much as by 40% this year, according to a report by UNCTAD. But still, once again, this is not the worst scenario. Even it's more likely that world investment may contract by more than 40% this year and in the following year as well, depending upon how rapidly the COVID-19 pandemic will be spreading throughout the whole world. And people are now saying that global firms are now all escaping from China and returning to their home countries. So now global value chains are kind of production and sales network that have been constructed by global companies throughout the whole year, particularly in the region of Asia. So in 2017, for example, trade related to global value chains accounted for about 74% of global trade. The export-oriented East Asian economies became the factory of the world with China at its center. From the viewpoint of global companies, the most important characteristics of the global supply chain or global value chain is that it minimizes costs and it maximizes efficiency at the same time. Each stage of the global supply chain can be performed as its optimal location. For example, to build a car, for example, not just one country like Korea, but also a number of different countries like China, the Philippines, Malaysia, Japan, and the US, and more, are all participating in producing Korean product of car, but it is not actually a Korean product of car, but it is actually made in the whole world in a sense, because many countries are altogether participating in the process of production of the car. Hyundai car, I mean, countries are actually producing so and so parts and components, while some others are actually assembling, all those parts and components to produce the final product of Hyundai car. So many countries are all taking part, in the production of Hyundai car. So, however, the global value chain has been hit hard by COVID-19 crisis. In fact, when China, for example, the original epicenter of the pandemic, started to lock down the economy and close production facilities, the global value chains of large global companies which used China as a production base for producing intermediate goods began to crumble, and the spread of COVID-19 exposed the extreme fragility of the global value chain. So if there are production disruptions, even in just one country, perhaps because it is experiencing a major outbreak of COVID pandemic, for example, the entire global value chain was at risk of falling apart. Therefore, to minimize and diversify the risk of disruptions, many global companies will be tempted to reduce their reliance on production in China and other developing countries. Therefore, reshoring, just the opposite of offshoring, will gather momentum as companies from advanced countries shift a substantial part of their production back home. And there have been many news reports about the trade conflicts and some sort of diplomatic and political conflicts between the U.S. and China. As a matter of fact, during his presidential election campaign in 2016, Donald Trump, the current president of the U.S., shouted the slogan of America First and pledged to make America great again, and vowed to raise tariffs against imports from China by as much as 45%. And in July 2018, well before the COVID-19 pandemic began, the U.S. kicked off the U.S.-China trade conflict in full force by imposing a 25% tariff on 818 Chinese imports items worth about 34 billion US dollars. Therefore, began the trade war between the world's two largest economies, and which is bad for China and also for America, and also bad for the whole world. Above all, East Asian countries, which are very much closely linked with both China and America, are now standing to suffer a significant fallout from the conflicts between these two, mega-sized countries. And because of the time constraint, I think I'd like to just skip some of the slides that I just prepared here now. As a matter of fact, the globalization gains momentum because of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I said, in previous slides, international trade and investment have been decreasing and will be decreasing very drastically because of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, actually, international trade and investment have been sort of decreasing for the past 10 years or so. So we can say that deglobalization had started well before the pandemic. So here's some evidence for that. So as you see now, this graph shows the global exports of goods and services as the percentage of global GDP. As you see now, since the years of 2009 and 10, you see now the global trade as the percentage of global GDP has no longer been increasing like that. It has been sort of just staying at the same level at the most. If we were to look at some, Asian countries like China, Korea, and other East Asian Pacific countries, you see now Korea's, exports as the percentage of GDP, once again, has been decreasing since 2011, very drastically, and China's exports has been also decreasing, and exports from all other East Asian Pacific countries have been decreasing as well. So this is kind of an evidence that there has been sort of downward trend of globalization in terms of exports of goods and services, particularly for Asian countries. And also global capital flows has been decreasing as the percentage of GDP once again since the global financial crisis you see now. Actually, in 2008, when the global financial crisis just started, dropped quite drastically by more than 60% at the time, and it seemed to have increased a little bit, but since then it has been gradually decreasing. Particularly, you see now actually there are actually three different kinds of capital flows. One type is a foreign direct investment, another is a portfolio investment, and the very last one is bank loans here now. So mostly, actually, the bank loans have been decreasing quite drastically since the global financial crisis. And FDI, as you see now, FDI also actually, FDI is just part of the capital flows, and FDI as the percentage of GDP has been also decreasing very rapidly since 2008. And also the movement of people in terms of migration inflows or work migrant inflows, and also in terms of overall movement of people, they all have been sort of decreasing in recent years. In other words, overall, as I said, just goods and services trade has been sort of decreasing also, and also global capital movements has been also decreasing, and also migration flows, the movement of people has been also decreasing in recent years. So therefore, we can say that there has been sort of deglobalization on the way well before the COVID-19 pandemic began this year. Actually, there are some reasons for deglobalization. One is the polarization of income and wealth, and the second is the depolarization of income and wealth between developed countries and developing countries. And the third is the fourth industrial revolution, and the fourth is secular stagnation due to population aging and so forth. Actually, I do not have time, but this is a kind of a set of slides that I just prepared to make a presentation when we have an on-site capacity building workshop later this year. So if you want to be able to come to our training workshops later this year or next year, then perhaps I just go over more detailed explanation of why deglobalization has been on the way for the past 10 years or so. So let me just skip all these slides. All I want to say is that because of the increasing bipolarization between people in most of the countries, there has been sort of growing backlashes against globalization in both the developed and developing countries. And also it has been sort of decreasing polarization between high income and low income countries. That's another reason for deglobalization as far as I'm concerned. In other words, as developed countries are caught up with by developing countries in various areas, there have been growing backlashes against globalization in high-income countries. So political leaders of high-income countries want their global companies to come back home. The fourth industrial revolution has been underway for the past 10 years or so, as you know as well. This is another reason for the deglobalization. Why? Because of the fact that, let me just touch upon this issue. Now, because of the increasing use of robots and artificial intelligence and some of the automatic production machines, the importance of physical labor in production process has been shrinking, and hence cheap labor of developed countries have become less attractive. And new technologies of the fourth industrial revolution are more advanced in developed high-income home countries. Therefore, their multinational companies have been just coming back home to make the most of high-tech industries of their home countries. And the last, I think, reason for the deglobalization in recent years is because of the fact that most of the advanced countries have been entering secular stagnation due to their, rapidly aging population. Actually, population aging is a phenomenon of the entire world. As you see now, actually, the population size people of ages of 60 or over are now actually projected to increase very rapidly. Particularly, for the countries in Europe. In Europe now, actually, the vertical axis shows the percentage of people aged 60 years or greater. So you see now it has been increasing in Europe, also in North America, and also in Oceania. Oceanian countries are Australia and New Zealand. And also in Asia, it has been also increasing very rapidly. So therefore, now with greater portion of aged population, these countries, the advanced countries located in Europe, North America, in Oceania, and also in Asia, such as Japan, have been sort of experiencing sort of secular stagnation, very long-term structural economic recession because of the population aging. What that all means is that because of the economic recession, people become more protectionists. In other words, secular stagnation is very much likely to trigger trade protectionism in these countries. So, what are the implications for Asian countries? Globalization, as you know, was one of the forces that helped created the First World War because it has profoundly destabilizing effects, which are the same kinds of effects that we are now also seeing today, according to a news article of The Economist magazine in June 14th of 2017. In other words, actually the current globalization is the third globalization, which started after World War II. The first and second globalization actually stopped with the outbreaks of world wars. The first globalization actually started in the years of around 1850, and then it just stopped with the outbreak of World War One, and then the second globalization started with the end of World War One, and then it just stopped all of a sudden once again with the outbreak of World War II. And then, with the end of World War II, the third globalization started with the launch of Bretton Woods system, and also the GATT and the WTO, and later on, because of the rapid, development of technologies in terms of, ICT and also transportation and such. So now we are now sort of approaching sort of the end of globalization, the third globalization. So some people may worry that we may just, have another world war, which is going to be the World War III. But it is very unlikely to go for a full-scale hot war between, nuclear superpowers, which are the U.S. and China. But it is very much likely, I think, to go back to Cold War between these two countries. As if we just had a Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. And the Cold War may mean many small-scale wars. So according to the newspaper article of the Economist magazine, once again, just as in the first era, globalization has disrupted international and domestic power structures. And thankfully, this does not mean that another world war is inevitable, but it is easy to imagine regional conflicts. Iran against Saudi Arabia, and American attack on North America that provokes a Chinese reaction and such, according to the newspaper article of the Economist magazine. So what does all this mean for Asian countries? Asian countries have grown very rapidly, relying on globalization, and the deglobalization, just the opposite situation means slower growth for these countries. And these countries are very likely to be forced to choose one side, over another in the new Cold War. So once again, the new Cold War is likely between the U.S. and China, and Asian countries are likely to be in a situation of East European countries during the Cold War between the U.S. And the Soviet Union. So what are the choices for East Asian countries then? So as I said, East Asian countries have been able to grow very fast because of their, very active, enthusiastic, rigorous, export-oriented growth policies. Then, because of the protectionism in most of the advanced countries, and also because of the Cold War between China and the U.S., perhaps the global exports will continue to shrink. Then what are the choices for East Asia? Then do we have to then turn to domestic demand-driven growth? However, the benefits of exports are various, and domestic demand-driven growth is a feasible option only for large and advanced countries. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, domestic demand-driven growth is not an option for most of the Asian countries. Therefore, we'll continue to try to expand our trade among us and also with other countries in the world. Then the question is then, whether we'll have to turn to the regionalism over multilateralism. Multilateralism is the kind of, internationalism led by the WTO, World Trade Organization. But as you know, the WTO has become very ineffective, during the last few years because of course, the U.S. President Donald Trump, and also because of some, trade conflicts between the U.S. and China, and also perhaps because of the deglobalization process, in the past few years, and also, in the years to come. But still, I feel that multilateralism is a better choice for most of the small countries. But the problem, once again, is that WTO may no longer be what it used to be in the past. Perhaps Asian countries overall may need to strengthen our regional cooperation. Then the question is, what kinds of regionalism that we would need? So, as trade is important for Asian countries, not just East Asian, but the overall Asian countries, making Asia a regional free trading bloc may be an option. However, Asia with China, but without the US, wouldn't be ideal, perhaps for many countries. And we have some regional cooperation mechanisms such as RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or CPTPP, which is comprehensive and progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. And also, there has been some discussion of forming APEC-wide FTA. So what would be the ideal form of regionalism in Asia? Some issues that we really would need to discuss among the countries in the region. So there are many issues, once again, that we would need to discuss, during the period of deglobalization in the post-corona era, or in the post-corona world. So there are many issues, once again, that we would need to think about with the advent of all of a sudden COVID-19 pandemic. So I really would like to meet with you in person in the very near future, so that we could share our insights on how we can cooperate and collaborate in the years of deglobalization with the advent of COVID-19 pandemic. Well, this is the end of my presentation today. Once again, I really would like to say that you are all going to be safe and happy in this very unprecedented, difficult period of time because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much for your participation. I once again look forward to seeing you in person in the near future. Bye-bye.